In 2016, Rob Reiner's son, Nick, said this.
I was like, I'm sick of this cycle, this using drugs, it being so temporary, the fix, then going back into a place for months on end, then getting out and just, rinse, wash, repeat.
This being my life.
Yeah.
So why did Nick relapse? Here's what he said moments later.
I kind of knew that I wanted to relapse, basically. I didn't even want to call it a relapse. I just wanted to get back to my old life. I got back on dope and other things.
As a therapist and a former addict, I see a pattern that shows up in families across all income levels. It's when you're so busy trying to be who your family needs you to be that the real you completely disappears, and addiction becomes a way to survive that pressure. I am not diagnosing anyone. These are professional opinions shaped by clinical training and lived experience in recovery. By the end of this video, you'll understand how something like this happens, not just to Hollywood royals, but even in your family. To understand the pressure, listen to how Nick reacts to his own name.
Say and spell your first and last name for me.
I ain't gotta tell you my first and last name. Most people know me as Did David.
Nick Reiner, grandson of comedy giant Carl Reiner, son of Rob Reiner, director of iconic films like The Princess Bride and When Harry Met Sally. He grew up in extreme privilege, access to any doctor, any rehab, financial stability, a leg up in life. So the $1 million question is, how does something like this happen in a family with so much wealth and influence?
For everyone, it's different. For me, the noise was basically, living in the family that I live in and catching heat for that sort of stuff. And also just...
For being a Reiner?
I guess.
Most people think the more money, the better. But when it comes to mental health and addiction, wealth can build a trap that's even harder to escape.
Sometimes I just come out to gather my sick thoughts.
When you believe every problem has a price tag, you stop facing the painful emotional truth. In a way, wealth creates a shortcut, but usually those shortcuts lead you right back to where you started. Second, it eliminates rock bottom.
So what was rock bottom?
There wasn't one. It's all rock bottom. It all sucked.
As a former addict, I still remember how much it meant to me when I was finally able to fill the fridge with groceries and enjoy a hot meal. I value those things because I had to struggle for them. But Nick has access to everything all the time. When you never have to want for anything, you never learn to value anything. For Nick, a destructive drug binge ended with him being returned to a luxury guest house. His penalty was comfort. When you never really have to face real consequences, you never learn the value of what you have.
Only answer I can give for wanting to tell a story like this is that it's even more powerful to tell it about someone who is going through this and they're given everything and they're in an opulent situation and they're still deciding to go to the drugs. And that's more powerful than some, in our opinion, that's the only story that we know. We don't know any other story.
Third, wealth adds on a whole nother layer of stress. Failures aren't private. Relapses aren't just setbacks. They're a potential public relation crisis for the family brand. And that shame is fuel on the fire. For Nick, all that access meant his parents were constantly working. Rob traded connection for legacy. And early on, a pattern was set. When young Nick screamed for attention, it was reportedly easier for the parents to just give in than to set firm boundaries. But the problem is that pattern makes handling adult addiction almost impossible. This leads to a point where the whole family gets used to the chaos. When the yelling, the punching walls, the trashing of the guest house happens over and over for years, it becomes your new normal. They start to believe this is just his limit. Sure, he might break a lamp, but he would never hurt a person. They stop seeing the red flags because they've been living in survival mode for a decade.
How bad did it get at home between the two of you?
It's reflected in the movie where the father character talks about how, he didn't know what to do, so he listened to anybody who had a desk and a diploma.
The next point is something I really need parents and families to understand. By the time your child is an adult, you're no longer shaping their nervous system. You're just reacting to the way it's already been wired. When Rob said, "I should have listened to my children," he was absolutely right. But the tragedy is he was 20 years too late. By then, the damage is already done.
I know my child better than an expert does, and I probably should have trusted my own instinct. And that's one of the things I did learn about the whole experience.
The irony is, Nick actually knew exactly what would have worked all along.
What worked for you that mom and dad did and what didn't?
Everything, what worked is when they kind of were like, you know what, they turned their back and they were like, you got to figure it out for yourself. You're an adult now, this is getting old, sort of, not like we don't care, but just I don't know.
But instead, Rob trying to control the situation and protect the family's name only made things worse.
The whole process brought us closer together.
He transitioned to a do-it-yourself model, letting Nick live in the guest house that he previously wrecked while seeing visiting therapists.
Yeah, I went 10 rounds with my guest house. Got totally spun out on uppers. I think it was coke and something else, and I was up for days on end, and I started punching out different things in my guest house. Everything in the guest house got wrecked.
Experts suggest this gave Nick a sense that there were no consequences.
I was a real nutcase. I was crazy. And I just, it was more than drugs. It's really always about more than that. And I needed a lot of that sort of discipline.
So he felt trapped in a palace that felt like a prison. Don't think you're immune to this. This pattern shows up in working class families too. The names are different, but the dynamics are the same. If you want to know what's really going on underneath it all, it's this. When children feel like their parents are only paying attention to the perfect version of themselves and not the real person underneath, they will do drastic things just to get noticed. And for Nick, addiction was his way of tearing that mask off. This isn't just about famous families. In modern society, there's a child pressure to be a doctor who secretly hates science, the athlete's son who just wants to paint. For an addict, the addict identity can become the last identity they feel like they can claim. It screams, "You might control my life, but you don't control my addiction. This is the one thing that belongs to me." Things really took a tragic turn when they decided to use a movie to bridge the gap between them instead of doing the actual emotional work.
I'm not going to listen to you tell me what a drug addict I am.
Tough, Dan.
Careful, I'm one of your constituents now. You wouldn't want to lose the governor's race by one vote.
You can either head back to treatment or live on the streets. It's your choice.
Being Charlie was supposed to be a healing passion project, but it became about making sure everyone looked good instead of being honest. Reports say Rob wouldn't allow a story that painted him as a bad father, so Nick's deepest demons weren't fully explored. Promoting the film was torture for Nick. Sitting next to his charming dad, being called a child in the press, he relapsed immediately after. The project that was supposed to give him a voice actually made him feel more trapped. So, what could have been done? What can you do? It's never too late to learn these things. Ask for help, but don't follow it blindly. If you had a bad experience with a doctor, you don't stop going to the doctor. You just find a better one. Rob Reiner said he should have trusted his gut instead of the diplomas on the wall. But when it is your own kid, your gut is usually full of fear, not facts. Professionals are trained to see the patterns that parents are just too close to see. Set firm rules, but do it with love. Helping someone without setting limits isn't actually helping. It's just making it easier for them to stay stuck. We often think we're being compassionate when we're really just too scared to say no.
I would listen to them, and the whole idea of tough love and you have to be a certain way, and it's not my nature. It's not the way I am built.
You have to set boundaries early and stick to them. And remember, the whole family needs therapy, not just the addict. Everyone needs therapy. Recovery doesn't happen all at once. It's about slow, steady progress. Help your kids find their own path before a crisis starts. Many addicts are actually terrified of doing well because they don't know who they are without their problems. They choose the familiar pain of failing over the scary uncertainty of success. Lastly, we have to choose wisdom over our first reactions. Science and faith actually say the same thing. Both tell us the same thing. Don't believe everything you feel. Neuroscience shows that our emotional brain reacts way faster than our thinking brain. The Bible warns us about this a long time ago, saying that our hearts can actually trick us. In my early recovery, I live by this verse. Trust in the Lord and do not lean on your own understanding. It's about taking a breath and choosing a better path rather than acting on impulse. Think back to that Google search earlier in this video. There's a whole generation of people who don't even know who Rob Reiner is. 20 years from now, that name might not even mean anything to anyone. If only Nick had realized that door to his prison was never actually locked. He would have been free to be himself instead of what he thought his family wanted him to be. We spend so much time feeling trapped by what people expect of us. But the truth is, we had the key to the cage all along. This story isn't about assigning blame. It's about understanding devastating patterns so fewer families ever reach a breaking point. The Reiner tragedy is a pressure cooker that finally exploded. If you see your family in any part of the story, if you're living in survival mode, if you feel trapped by family expectations, know that you are not alone. Reach out, get help for the system, not just the individual. And remember, your identity is not your family's legacy. It's yours to build. Thanks for watching. If you got value from this video, do me a huge favor, like, subscribe, and let's help change society one video at a time.